Okay, the second part of this series will focus on what is in a Speak application. Now this is going to cover a number of topics. The first thing I want to do is look at a Speak application versus a Sitecore page and break each one of those down. Now, as most of you are developers, you will probably know how a page is represented within Sitecore. Firstly, you have the item, which represents the page itself. This item will have a layout, which is generally an ASPX file associated with it, and various sub-layouts or renderings, which are either ASCX and C# files or XSLTs. Now, if we look at a Speak application, we'll find it's not too different. We still have the Sitecore item, which is the application. We still have a layout, but the Speak layout is using Razor or .cshtml files instead of ASPX, and we still have these components or renderings, but we just have the shift into client-side technology, so we have CSHTML and JavaScript files rather than C# and ASCX. Now, I'll just reiterate over the breakdown of the application. In this image, I have an example application which charts user interaction within the site. This application is made up of a number of different components which are associated via this layout file. Now, each component itself will then have its own item, which has the associated Razor, CSHTML, and JavaScript file. And this goes for all the components within the application. Now, there is one key difference between a Speak application and a Sitecore page. As I did this at TrendSpot, this was a fair few months ago or last year now, there have been some changes within Speak, and it doesn't have as much focus on MVVM, but I'll still cover it. Now, MVVM stands for Model View View Model. Now, most of you should be familiar with Model View Controller, where we have a view which represents the content or a page, controller which allows the user to interact with the data, and the model. Now, this model contains all the data on the page and updates the view, so we have this circular reference where the controller updates the model, model updates the view, and the view displays it to the user. So it's very simple. Now, model view view model is very similar, but instead of the controller, we have a view model. This view model binds the data between the view and the model, so we have this one-for-one data binding. Now, the second part to it is the underlying technology within Speak. As I previously mentioned, there have been some changes, and these actual JavaScript technologies have changed slightly in the newer version, but I'll still cover them. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to cover Backbone.js as it was an integral part. What this meant is we got event binding within a Speak application, which meant we could bind the changes for a specific field and associate an action or a function to occur on that change. We had Knockout to allow us to do this model view view model concept, where we would bind various fields. So in this case, an element will bind the value of this element to equal whatever's in the title field. Finally, we have Require.js. Now, Require is AMD or asynchronous module definition, which allows us to dynamically insert or load JavaScript files and other modules into the code on the application load and various control loads. Now, what is within Speak? Now, as I mentioned, it's a framework, so you get 50 plus standard components, and this is increasing. This is within the business component library, so it's available for all the developers. In addition to that, it allows us to develop and create our own components within this application. As this is all designed for developers, I will focus on the custom component creation more so.